You ever look at your bank account and think, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to, so why does it still feel like I'm behind? You work, you earn, you try to be responsible, and yet, the money never seems to stay. It's a strange feeling, not exactly panic, but a quiet, persistent pressure in the background of your life. Like something isn't working, but you can't quite figure out what. And here's the uncomfortable truth most people never realize. The real financial problem in their life is usually not the one they think it is. Most people believe their money problem is simple. They assume it's one of three things. They don't earn enough, they spend too much, or they just need to learn how to invest. And to be fair, those things can matter. But after watching thousands of people talk about money, struggle with money, stress about money, something interesting becomes clear. People are often solving the wrong problem. They think the issue is income, when the issue is stability. They think the issue is spending, when the issue is uncertainty. They think the issue is investing, when the issue is emotional pressure. It's a little like going to the doctor with a headache, and assuming the problem is dehydration. So you drink more water, but the headache stays, because the real issue was sleep, or stress, or something deeper that wasn't obvious at first. Money works the same way. The surface problem is rarely the real one, and when you misdiagnose the problem, you end up applying solutions that never really fix anything, which leads to a frustrating cycle. You try harder, you feel guilty, you wonder what you're doing wrong, but the truth is, you were trying to fix the wrong thing all along. One of the hardest parts about money is that financial problems are rarely visible. If someone breaks their arm, everyone can see it. If someone is struggling financially, it's usually hidden. You can have two people earning the same salary. One feels stable and calm. The other feels constant pressure. Same income, same economy, same opportunities. Completely different experience. Why? Because financial problems are often psychological before they're mathematical. It's not just about numbers. It's about how those numbers interact with your life, your responsibilities, your expectations, your sense of security, your fears about the future, and most importantly, your mental bandwidth. When money feels unstable, it quietly occupies space in your mind all day long. Not always loudly. Sometimes it's subtle. A small hesitation before buying groceries. A quick mental calculation before paying a bill. A quiet worry late at night about what happens if something goes wrong. It's not always a crisis, but it's always there. And when that feeling becomes normal, people start assuming it's just how life works. But often, that pressure comes from a financial problem they haven't actually identified yet. Let's talk about some of the most common ways people misinterpret their financial struggles. Because once you see these patterns, they become hard to ignore. The first misdiagnosis is believing the problem is income. You hear this everywhere. If I just made more money, everything would be fine. And sometimes that's true. But surprisingly often, it isn't. There are people earning modest incomes who feel relatively stable. And there are people earning very high incomes who feel constantly stressed. Because income alone doesn't determine financial comfort. What matters more is something else entirely. Predictability. Humans handle limited resources much better than unpredictable resources. If you know exactly how much money is coming in every month, your brain relaxes. But when income fluctuates, even if it's higher overall, your brain stays in alert mode. Freelancers experience this constantly. One month feels abundant, the next month feels uncertain. Even when the yearly income looks good on paper, the emotional experience feels unstable. So the real issue isn't always not enough money. Sometimes it's not enough predictability. And those require completely different solutions. The second misdiagnosis is believing the problem is spending. People often blame themselves. They assume their habits are the problem. They think they lack discipline. But many spending habits aren't actually about irresponsibility. They're about emotional regulation. Imagine someone who works long hours in a stressful job. They come home exhausted. Ordering food feels easier than cooking. Buying small comforts feels justified. It's not just about the purchase. It's about relief. When your life is mentally exhausting, spending becomes a way to create short moments of comfort. Not because you're careless, but because your brain is trying to balance stress. So when people say, just stop spending so much, they're often missing the deeper issue. The spending might be a symptom, not the root problem. If the stress stays the same, the spending habit usually returns. The third misdiagnosis is believing the problem is investing. This one has exploded over the last decade. People think wealth comes from finding the right stock, the right crypto project, the right strategy. And investing is important. But many people try to solve financial anxiety through investing before solving stability. It's like trying to decorate a house before building the foundation. Investing works best when your financial life already has a sense of safety. Emergency savings. Predictable expenses. Breathing room. Without those things, investing can actually increase anxiety. Because every market fluctuation feels personal. You're not just watching numbers move. You're watching your sense of security rise and fall with them. And that's exhausting. So if the issue often isn't income, spending, or investing, what is it? The real financial problem most people face is something far less discussed. Fragility. A fragile financial life is one where small disruptions cause large stress. A car repair. A medical bill. A delayed paycheck. A rent increase. Individually, none of these events are catastrophic. But in a fragile system, they feel overwhelming. Think of it like walking on a tightrope. If your financial life has no margin, every step feels risky. You're always one unexpected event away from panic. And here's the tricky part. Fragility often looks normal from the outside. People are paying bills. They're working. They're functioning. But internally, there's constant pressure. Not because they're failing, but because their financial system has no buffer. Most people don't realize fragility is the real problem. Because the world constantly tells them something else. Social media shows lifestyles. Financial content focuses on investing. Career advice focuses on earning more. All of those things matter, but they skip a critical step. Stability. Humans need stability before they can build wealth. Without stability, every decision becomes emotional. Should I invest this money? Or keep it in case something happens? Should I spend this? Or save it for emergencies? When your system has no margin, every decision carries psychological weight. And over time, that weight becomes exhausting. The turning point usually comes when someone realizes something simple but powerful. The goal of money isn't just growth. It's calm. It's the ability to go through daily life without constant background stress. It's the ability to handle small surprises without panic. It's knowing that one bad week doesn't collapse everything. Once you understand that, your priorities start to shift. You stop asking, how do I get rich faster? And you start asking a different question. How do I make my financial life less fragile? That question changes everything. Because suddenly the goal isn't chasing opportunity. It's building resilience. And resilience creates something far more valuable than quick gains. Peace of mind. So what does this look like in real life? It usually begins with something surprisingly simple. Creating margin. Margin means having space between your income and your obligations. Space between your savings and your emergencies. Space between your plans and reality. It doesn't have to be dramatic. Even small buffers change how money feels. A few months of expenses saved. Bills slightly below your income. Less dependence on perfect timing. These things don't look impressive online. But psychologically, they change everything. When margin exists, your brain relaxes. Decisions become clearer. Long-term thinking becomes easier. And investing finally starts to feel like building, instead of gambling. Another important shift is redefining progress. Most people think financial progress means bigger numbers. Higher income, bigger investments, more assets. But sometimes progress is quieter. Lower stress, more predictability, fewer financial emergencies. Those things rarely go viral on the internet, but they matter deeply in real life. Because financial health isn't just about how much money you have. It's about how your life feels. And perhaps the most helpful realization is this. You don't have to solve everything at once. Financial stability isn't built through dramatic changes. It grows through small, consistent improvements. A little more savings. A little more clarity. A little less fragility. Over time, those small adjustments create something powerful. Confidence. Not the loud, motivational kind. But the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you're no longer living on a tightrope. Money is strange. It touches almost every part of life, yet we rarely talk about the emotional side of it honestly. We talk about salaries, investments, markets. But the real experience of money is often much quieter. It's the feeling you have when you check your bank account. It's the thoughts that appear when you think about the future. It's the subtle question many people carry with them every day. Am I going to be okay? The good news is, financial stability rarely comes from dramatic breakthroughs. It usually comes from understanding the real problem. And for many people, that problem isn't laziness, irresponsibility, or lack of intelligence. It's simply that their financial system was fragile. Once you see that clearly, you stop blaming yourself, and you start building something stronger. Not overnight, not perfectly, but steadily. And over time, something surprising happens. The constant background stress begins to fade. Money stops feeling like a mystery you're always trying to solve. And instead, it becomes something quieter. A tool. A support system. A way to create a life that feels a little calmer, a little safer, and a little more under your control. And in the end, that kind of progress might be the most valuable kind there is. Because when your financial life becomes less fragile, everything else in life starts to feel a little lighter too.